ministry and the agencies to regulate the running of lotteries and any other form of betting disguised as polls, and which many have used to do this game. But in the end of the day, it is a game like any other game. It is a casino. As much as we'll do all this, it is just like entering a casino and gambling with, you're trying to gamble and see whether you can make more money. The other thing in the motion, Mr. Speaker, you find that he talks about Kenyans getting addicted to this form of gambling, and that has led to lots of loss. It has led to lots of loss. It has led for people leaving school, not finishing even their colleges. Mr. Speaker, it has led to parents wondering what to do, and even a child becoming very violent when he realizes he doesn't have money. The same way, Mr. Speaker, a child, a youth who is addicted to drugs is the same way a youth when addicted to gambling. That when he doesn't have, he will do anything to get this. And so I would wish, even as parents, we now relook at all these issues. Let us try and talk to our kids, to our children, to our youths. It is the church, Mr. Speaker. You know, most of these things, we've just left it. I don't know. We've decided just the world to teach our children. The church has to come in, just the way our Muslim brothers and sisters, they will never allow their children to go to gamble. And so Christians, we have to start telling our children, gambling is not the right way of life. And appreciate that. And it is something we have to do it, knowing very well we've taken a while. So the church must come back to it. And so as I finalize, we need an all-inclusive approach, a holistic approach to work around this issue. Just the way we are working around on alcoholism is the same way we have to work around on betting, that this is not the thing we have to do. It is just a hobby, but not a way you can say, this is a way I will live my life betting. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Member for Garissa Township.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the issue on the table about betting. As you have been told, or we have been told severally by those who contributed before me, that the seriousness of the problem we are facing as a country, and especially our young people who have gone a different way of life or have resorted that the easy way of making quick monies. This culture or this direction we have taken as a society really affects our people. For us as a Muslim society, betting is considered as haram. It's not a way that is advised for our people or our young people. Therefore, if I were to bring something of this nature to the House, I would have gone to the extreme that we should actually declare betting an illegal activity in this country. But having given my brother who has brought the motion to the House, we support him on that issue. This issue of betting borders to addiction, just like drugs. And therefore, as a House, as a country, we must take a stand action in ensuring that our young people do not go that direction. For that reason, I beg to support the motion. Thank you.
Member for Kirinyaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion by the Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, it is not only young people that are plagued by betting. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the villages, and by this I'm pertaining even Kirinyaga County, you find that we now have a different system where old people are lured into betting by media stations. Mr. Speaker, I remember there's a time there was a conversation on the social platforms of this nation, specifically Twitter, in regard to the addiction and the havoc betting is reigning in the villages. Mr. Speaker, I remember a neighbor of mine, I think they sold the cow. The only thing they did not sell was a dog. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, it was hell for that family, because you find that it creates conflict in the villages. And Mr. Speaker, unregulated, anything that is unregulated is something that is poisonous, Mr. Speaker, because we normally say that too much of anything is poison, Mr. Speaker. I am calling upon this House to embrace regulating the betting industry, Mr. Speaker. And we must think of it expansively. We cater for every genre. For the young people of this nation, Mr. Speaker, they're driven to betting because of desperation, Mr. Speaker. We have a culture nowadays, you know, in the slangs, we call it glamming. You know, people want to get rich overnight. People want to bet to richness, Mr. Speaker. And these young people, they're people who have gone to universities, Mr. Speaker. As I speak, and I speak as a young person of this nation, before I joined Parliament, Mr. Speaker, I was unemployed, Mr. Speaker. That does not mean that I am uneducated, Mr. Speaker. I am a qualified advocate of the High Court, but I have colleagues who up to date have never found employment. I have people who've studied medicine and different careers, Mr. Speaker. So it is something that we need to look from a wholesome perspective, Mr. Speaker. Besides regulating it, what are we doing to empower our people, Mr. Speaker? What are we doing to sensitize our people in the villages? Mr. Speaker, if you listen to any of the local stations, you will realize that most of them have a program where apparently you win some amount of money, Mr. Speaker. And I remember at some point it was discovered that the person that is being called on the other end of the line has been notified. It's sort of like a game they play to dupe the masses to give their money. But the person is given a portion of the money, and then the rest of the money is kept by the station, Mr. Speaker. We must investigate. Why are media stations engaging in betting, Mr. Speaker? Why is it unregulated, Mr. Speaker? So I call upon these members to look at it from a wholesome perspective, Mr. Speaker, so that we can cater and ensure that we protect our people from exploitation, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
Thank you. Member for Nyatike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance you have given to me. I stand to support the motion by Honorable Madenge, but I want us to agree on a number of issues. The focus, we are putting a lot of focus on the youth. I think we are missing the point, because when you talk of betting, majority of people who are betting currently are adults. And those youths, majority of them, are seeing this thing happening in their houses by their parents. So they grow in a betting society where they inherit this thing from their own parents. If we want to curtail this thing, we need to borrow from some practices. We have tried in this country through Ministry of Health to warn people about cigarette smoking, but have we stopped smoking? It's written everywhere, and when you go there to buy a packet of cigarette, it's well written, it's dangerous for your health, and you'll still continue to buy it. So even this betting, because we are talking about it as an addictive, if you are not careful, we can advertise it everywhere and say it's dangerous, it's everything like that. And people will still continue doing it. What do? We cannot say today that we are going to stop betting, because it's happening all over the world. When we stop the sport pesa in Kenya, they gained root in Tanzania, and they still did their business there. And Kenyans were still doing it in the platform of Tanzania. We say we don't want them in Kenya, but we still post money to sport pesa while they are practicing in Tanzania, and that money goes also to Tanzania. The only remedy we can do here, number one, we have to target churches. People must be correctly educated and nurtured through the churches. Number two, these people must be given tax which can limit the profit they are getting so that they also become responsible. We have to deal with the tax level, because you'll find somebody opening the farm and in a day they become billionaires. at the expense of that poor person down there who is sacrificing his 20 shillings to bet. So this money, we must make sure we get a better percentage of this money to come and assist those youths to get bursaries and build colleges for them. But if we declare today that we are stopping betting in this country, it will not cure anything because people will still bet in other international platforms. Let us accept it, make it very painful for those people who are doing it, and we make sure this money is channeled to the correct use. And the correct use would be targeting the youth, targeting colleges, targeting what can translate back to the development of the same people so that we make them better citizens. But my last comment, Honorable Speaker, let us target parents. If we ignore parents, I've seen a number of people closing their shops. I've seen a number of people clearing their stock. I've seen a number of people losing even their own cars on betting. These youths we are talking about don't have cars. They don't have those shops. Our own people who are adults and are eager to make quick wealth are the people who are wrong role models in this country and spoiling our youth. So we need to deal with these parents first. Then we correct this menace once and for all. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Bomet East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. This is a very good motion whereby
what's happening to you? Is there a problem with you? You okay? Okay. let the Bomet East contribute.
So my colleague and member of the same committee, I don't think there was something you wanted to interject. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I want also to, this has been very long overdue in discussing and trying to regulate these gaming and gambling. Mr. Speaker, to be very sincere, in all our areas, as you must have witnessed from all the members of parliament who have just talked in the floor of the House, that gaming is something very addictive, like cigarette and all these other drugs. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, for this industry to be controlled, I think we have, as a House, to have serious punitive action whereby we need to allow only those who are capable of or having money, and those who are over 18 to participate in this gambling. We have to increase the taxes into a certain level whereby if these youths, those youths who are prone of trying to steal even from some parents, trying to do things which are not ethical so that they get money to do the gambling, we have to make sure that we increase the taxes to a certain level whereby it can only allow those who have money to do this gaming. We know gaming and gambling is a very lucrative business whereby it can bring a lot of, it brings a lot of revenue to the government, and by so doing, and we know even gambling is those who can win cannot easily, they are not guaranteed. It is only maybe around 1% of those who are doing the gambling. We hear also in the radio stations who are calling, they normally use all these people to call. We need only 5 people, 10 people to make sure that at least you are going to win, you are maybe the next person. And they must have talked to more than 100 or so people. And there's some money which are being taken from these people and they're not being accounted for. So by regulating this, we will have the government getting good monies, revenues, and in terms of taxes, and also trying to make our youths not to get indulged in this. With those very few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the motion.
Thank you. Member for Isiolo South. Member for Isiolo South. This.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. One thing about about betting. We have problems here and there. The problems we have is not only betting. Our young people and even the older ones, people go for these ones to get quick money. In the end, people are getting mad. Most of them are getting crazy just because they have wasted all what they have saved. Children who are going to school, all the dropouts, and all these things, drugs they are going into, is because of this betting thing. People want to get money every time. Not only that, there are other issues, like Mheshimiwa has said out there. In future, we are going to get some problems here. About the motorbikes and all these things, we have borders. In the next 20 years, because of accidents, we will be ending up with having a lot of disabilities in this country if we don't think of regulating some of these issues. Then there is this issue about equally loans by use of logbooks and whatever books or whatever titles or something like that. Even those ones are causing a lot of stress to Kenyans. I don't know when we can be able, because of the problems in Kenya, people seem to be going into a lot of ventures which could be very dangerous in future. So I support this motion because we have to do something. At least see that the government has done some regulations about what is supposed to be done in a proper manner. Otherwise, we will be facing a lot of suicide because of because of this betting thing. So regulation has to be done in such a manner that to safeguard our youth, and even the ones who are retiring. All the monies they receive from retiring people go back and do betting, and those are the kind of things which are happening. I support the motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The member for Moiben.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to support this motion on betting on behalf of the members of the constituency of Moiben, Mr. Speaker, gambling should be regulated because it is one of the worst sources of income. Mr. Speaker, in my many years in this country, Kenya, I'm yet to find a number of millionaires who have benefited from betting. It's yet to see a sizable percentage of Kenyans who have benefited from betting, and I think it should be regulated. The Betting Control and Licensing Board has a task, but we are yet to feel its work on the ground in as far as betting is concerned. It needs to be more robust and come in strongly to regulate this industry, which is causing menace in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we are almost become a country which is raising a youth of gamblers. Somebody said, it's not just the youth who are gambling, but we also have parents or majority of the people in society of Kenya. But Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, it is the youth who are the most affected. Specifically, when the sports betting was introduced some time back in the early 2000s, the youth took upon to work ways of making money through this gambling. And it's because of the way it's being advertised. It is very enticing to an extent that some of them have decided to just sit and lose creativity. We have a bunch of youths who are no longer creative. They just wish and hope on the gambling process to make a source of livelihood or to make them instant millionaires. And this gambling business is something which is covered in sheepskin. it camouflages itself as a big investment, yet nobody has actually benefited. Mr. Speaker, it is not just, this gambling is not just robbing the rich and the poor, but it is something which is affecting both caliber of people in society. And hence, if it is not regulated, the consequences which we are going to have in the near future, we will have a nation of gamblers, people who are not creative and just waiting to rob, to make money from gambling. And remember, I said before, I've never come across millionaires who have just made their source of, who have succeeded by just sitting down and betting. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know the consequences of betting, especially for those young people. Most of them, in the hope of making or becoming instant millionaires, have invested all their earthly earnings. We have students who, instead of going to school to pay school fees, they have resorted to chancing in the gambling, hoping to make money, and as a result, they have dropped out of school and they are just sitting at home. We have had cases of some of them committing suicide because they have lost everything. We have even had senior members of our society, we have had parents who have become victims of this betting, and they have lost all their earthly belongings, and they are stressing, and some of them even decide to take their lives away. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support this motion that this betting business should be regularized, and social marketing campaigns should be enhanced so that people know the consequences of betting. And if that is done, those who will participate will do so knowing the consequences. But most of the times, the betting is camouflaged with very nice stories, very nice images, very nice success stories, which in essence, it is not right. Which in essence, it's not right. So it should be, the social campaigns should be enhanced, and that is what the betting and licensing control should be busy doing, so that people will come to know the consequences other than just participating without, and eventually they become victims and they lose everything. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think I can stop at that so that I can give somebody else an opportunity to make a contribution.
Member for Kwanza.
At long last. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for the chance. I think the act itself, we would look at the act. And I think this House has the responsibility at least to be able to affirm that this act has weakened the whole philosophy as such. I'm saying this because witnessing what is happening, particularly the way the youths and even the elderly are participating in this so-called betting, and the act itself actually allows for anybody to do whatever you can do. But Mr. Speaker, call a spade a spade. I know for sure people talked about people getting weak and what have you financially. It is true, Mr. Speaker, I have cases where I've witnessed that actually a family in my locality where the husband took money because of this game gambling, and they used up to about 150,000 shillings that actually been sent by the son who's working overseas. And there was that disagreement with the family. And of course, what happens is people start fighting, physically fighting, and ended up actually somebody getting injured. I was called in and I said, now how do I get involved? But it looks like we should do something about this, because if you let it go like that and we don't resolve, we don't change the regulation, I think we have got more cases that are not made. In fact, as somebody mentioned, we have this country known for gambling. And I've known cases where students actually get money they're supposed to be going, and the parent looks for money, gives a student to go to school, and because it's a game, Liverpool against whatever, maybe Manchester United, and the radio, the media actually going to say who's going to win, and the boy actually didn't even reach school. He books himself a hotel to witness who is going to win, only to find that a friend of the family was in that particular hotel and was, you know, what is this boy doing in the hotel? He was actually waiting to do the gambling. So we should actually, and then of course what happens, the boy gets into and is addicted to the whole thing, and Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, the boy was very bright. Today he's not there. Ayuko Sai is not in school. He's now loitering around looking for jobs. So I want us to look at this because it affects the families financially. It leads, as the proposer said, it leads even the family breakup. And therefore we should do something about it. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that there are those who feel they should get money by hook and crook. Somebody calls me and tells me, you know, I've slept in Kiswahili, saying nimelala njaa, watoto wanalala njaa Kiswahili, in the quotes, that the family doesn't have anything. So he goes looking for the money, and just to be able to have the money to do the gambling. So I want us to, as a lawmaker, I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that we actually have to have this, because of the trend for which it was meant actually has diverted and is causing a lot of suffering to our people in this country. And therefore, we should actually resolve, and whichever ministries, I've just been asking my neighbor, which ministry actually controls this, be able to control this betting and the gambling issue so that it can be able to go away, get rid of the whole system.
The member for Kwanza, where I'm seated here and I'm listening to members, it seems this is a society issue.
Yes.
It seems this is an issue that the law will not correct. And I would imagine that members should be thinking of how best we deal with this away from the law. But I digress, just go on.
No, Mr. Speaker, we are lawmakers. We have to change, to change the regulation, even if it means now doing away with the law, so that we live as a Muslim society. Let it be that, because there's nothing we're gaining from it. I know the government gets some little income from the same, but surely, what about the family, the status of the family members? I think that's more important, because I represent the members, the people. I don't care how much we can get. You cannot get money from elsewhere. But look at the media itself. It's actually the one promoting this kind of thing. Look at what is happening around. You go to some places in the River Road, and these are there. And if you find boys have lined up, girls are lined up, and what happens? They are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Some of them, instead of looking for jobs, they are there gambling, hoping they'll be able to get, at the end of the day, be able to get the money. And of course, they get nothing. And they don't get nothing. What happens? It becomes a criminal. So we are actually in the ways trying to solve the problem for the future of this country. And therefore, let's go even the Muslim way, where we do away with this for some time, and until we get ourselves actually sopped up, at least get ourselves lined up in the right way, and then we can introduce this maybe 10 years to come. I may not be here at that time. But as it is, Mr. Speaker, I am against this act has actually ruined the whole country. And therefore, I support a motion, and this is for solve either to get to change the act, or altogether have whatever members are going to suggest here positively to be able to help the society. Otherwise, we are going to ruin the society and be held responsible in the future. What did you do at your time? I support the motion.
Thank you. Member for Marsabit. I think Member for Marsabit will be the last to contribute on this. Then we'll call the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to pass my message on this and to debate on this very important motion on betting. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the honorable member who came with this amendment to the motion on regulation of the betting industry. As I start, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that betting is one issue that has brought a lot of challenges to our country, and we seriously need to regulate so that we can mold our society to the society that it needs to be. Mr. Speaker, we've had a lot of negative impact as a result of this practice, and it does not only affect the young people, but it affects even the grown-ups and even the old people. It affects both the gender, and it has affected families negatively. As a result of this, I'm sure we all know that a lot of domestic violence has been there, and some marriages have gone into divorce. Many have been depressed because of this, and some people have even borrowed money that they are not able to pay. They have lost their properties, and this has been a real challenge in our society now for some time. Mr. Speaker, all this is as a result of lack of employment, dissatisfaction, and lack of contentment. When people want to get rich very fast and using a very easy way to get rich, because sometimes cheap is very expensive, and what you think is cheap might end up being expensive and also ruining your own life. Mr. Speaker, the only way that we can overcome this is to regulate and make sure that the regulations are also put in place and implemented in all the sectors. And other things that we can do are as follows. We have our young people who are mostly in schools, either primary schools or secondary schools. And I remember when we were growing up, there is this program called PP, Pastoral Program, that was initiated. And every Wednesday, or I think, yeah, once in a week, the students used to have that program whereby they are mentored spiritually. I think we need to come up with a program like that, whereby enough education is given to our young people, and also those in high school. Something like that can be put in their program in school, so that outside their normal syllabus or their curriculum, they can have 1 hour every week, so that they can be educated on the dangers of this. And if we do that, then our young people will grow up knowing the dangers and the bad negative effects of all this practice, and that can really help. The other thing we can do as a government or as a nation is also to have enough civic education, whereby even those school leavers who are idle can be educated, and we come up with a special program, and that can even be done with the current members of parliament. When you go to the constituencies, because our words are powerful, people listen to us, we can pass a message to people. And as we speak, we need to speak on all these things that affect our people, our young people. Civic education can be enhanced, and we can be telling people on the dangers of all this. I want to also say that as members of parliament, and especially those of us in 13th parliament, we have been given a great opportunity, because currently we are surrounded by so many challenges. A lot of our young people are already drug addicted. Many of them are not employed, and many of them are already getting into, even LGBTQ is becoming a real issue. And so we have the opportunity, because when we get to our constituencies, when we get to people and talk to people, many people listen to us, and we can use the opportunity we have to pass these important messages to people so that we tell them on the dangers and how it has ruined our people. And as I finish, the media is so much there to promote this practice. If we put all these controls in place, then the media should also be curbed so that them encouraging people will always, motivate another person to invest in that. And we can reduce the promotion of that, and I'm sure when the amendment is done, that will be taken care of. Mr. Speaker, I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, allow me to, before I call the mover to reply, to recognize the presence in the public gallery of the students from the AEF Ruben Primary School from Embakasi South, Nairobi County. They are welcome to view the happenings of Bunge this morning, and hope they learn something from their visit today. I therefore then call upon the mover of this motion, Honorable Madenge, to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I reply, allow me to donate 1.5 minutes each to member for Buleti, the Honorable CNN, member for Bere North, and the Taita Taveta County MP.
1.5 minutes each, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think in supporting this motion, we would want to remember that this nation, we need to protect our young people. Our nation is a young population, has a young population, and if we continue in this manner that we do not protect them against the ills that come from betting, we will be destroying our own selves. So in proposing this, we want to thank Honorable Madenge for bringing on board and also bringing this discussion so that the people of this nation may be able to understand the things that are happening within our society and also the effects of betting and unregulated betting. Number one, I think we need to look into the regulations so that we may be able to know where this can happen. The premises by which the Betting Control Licensing Board should be able to look into. Also, the kind of license the different stations may have. We have radio stations which have broadcasting license, but also being able, are still carrying out the.
Thank you. Thank you. Just finalize.
I still have time.
Finalize.
I still have time, Mr. Speaker. The other one is the tax regime, and to be able to integrate. Some of the things that are actually happening also is the lotos within our societies. They are moving from villages to even smaller units. We need to regulate them so that our society can be protected against such ills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion by Honorable Member for Nyeri Town. And the betting has wreaked havoc in this country, Mr. Speaker. And not only for our young men and women in our constituencies, but also the issues of vicious fight among the businessmen who are in the betting industry. And more so, also them failing to pay taxes as it is required by the law. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and beg the honorable member to move forward and come up with a bill which is going to regulate the betting industry in a holistic manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support and congratulate the member. Mr. Speaker, I really want to support regulating betting, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, betting and gaming is very, 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 Mr. Speaker, it is very addictive. And most of the people cannot handle the addiction that comes with gaming, Mr. Speaker. And in that case, Mr. Speaker, we have seen so many families. We have lost so many families because we find that people have gone into gaming and they have lost because of knowledge. Because before you get into gaming, you need to have the knowledge of the game. majority of the people get into the game without the knowledge, and therefore they lose in these games. And after that, they begin to look for means and ways on how to recover what they have lost. And they get into criminal activities. Mr. Speaker, we have seen people going to a point of stealing from their own families. And we have even seen youth or students, Mr. Speaker, taking the school fees that they've been given by parents to go and pay school fees, just to go and participate in these gaming activities, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I am very happy that today we are discussing. I'm grateful for the member for bringing this motion on regulating betting, and I'm in support that, Mr. Speaker, we should regulate gaming activity or the entire betting, so that, Mr. Speaker, it can be done with a lot of decency in our country.
A minute for Honorable Ngusia.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you so much, my friend from Nyeri Town, Mathenke, for bringing up this motion. Mr. Speaker, I'll begin by saying I was very fortunate to go for benchmark in Las Vegas and London last term, 2018. And we came up with serious regulations. And I would begin by noting that the problem in our country is not actually gambling and betting. It is our society and what we call financial exclusion of many people, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we need financial inclusion in this matter. Mr. Speaker, betting is not bad, but overindulgence is. And we have seen so many benefits of betting in our country, like the sports funds now. It's fully being financed by betting. But still, people who are overindulging in this matter are the ones who are actually doing this. So, Mr. Speaker, I would begin by saying, let our society act responsibly. Let us have what we call financial inclusion of every member of this society, and we will have no issues of betting. Otherwise, getting rich very quickly is dangerous, and there is no shortcut in life. Mr. Speaker, it's very difficult to summarize what I wanted to say with those few minutes, but with those few minutes, I beg to support and congratulate Honorable Member for bringing this on the floor of the House. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to donate 1 minute to Honorable Kalemba.
Thank you. That means only I'll have 2 minutes of yours to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Mathenke, and wish to congratulate you for coming up with this motion, because we need to regulate the betting. Mr. Speaker, the addiction that comes with betting is even worse than the one that comes with the consumption of alcohol. And our young people have been lied to that they can become millionaires overnight because of betting. Mr. Speaker, most unfortunate is that the media stations are the ones that are propagating this narrative. They ask you a simple question and they tell you that you'll get 500,000 for answering that question right through betting. Mr. Speaker, we need to regulate this so that we can make this country a better country and impose serious taxes, high taxes for these betting firms, so that also Kenya can benefit from the earnings. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank honorable members for their robust and insightful contributions to this motion. And it is true, society must be more central in the new dispensation in as far as controlling betting is concerned. Mr. Speaker, in a 2017 Geopoll survey on youths between 17 and 35 years, Kenya had the highest number of betting youths compared to Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. We are destroying an entire generation. Mr. Speaker, desperation for instant money, increased unemployment rates, constant announcements, the thrill of gambling, sleek advertising, and celebration of winners is feeding this insanity. Gambling losses lead to severe debt, listing on CLB, depression, and anxiety. Gambling must be listed among other social ills like rampant corruption, illicit sex, alcohol, drugs, and crime. Mr. Speaker, the Media Society of Kenya, which has a constitutional mandate to set standards and regulate compliance with those standards for the media, as well as the Media Council Act 2013, Section 6D, which obligates the MCK to promote and enhance ethical professional standards among journalists and media enterprises, acknowledges that gambling has been promoted by media houses and licensed gambling has been promoted by media houses. This state of affairs cannot continue. Gambling on our airwaves, Mr. Speaker, is taking gambling on every street, in every household in this country. This is worse than selling cigarettes in the kiosks. Mr. Speaker, the media must be open to scrutiny and accountability when it negates its primary duty. Mr. Speaker, gambling in airwaves is an insanity driven by the competition for audience, technology penetration, and the changing environment for the media, business environment for the media houses. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I hear the mood of the House is that we move with speed to introduce a bill to regulate betting in this country. And I am promising honorable members that I am up to the task. And the BCLB Act, which is the legal framework that is controlling and regulating betting in this country, is moribund, Mr. Speaker. It was enacted in 1966. At that time, there was no internet, there was no mobile money. And therefore, I thank this House for the contributions on this motion, and I believe it is time that we moved with speed to protect our society from this evil. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Honorable Madenge. I think the ball is on your court. You've had members, you've had everyone's views on this issue, and as you know, the very nature of a motion, we normally resolve. Most of the time, nothing turns on it. And so I like where you've ended, that you'll bring a bill to the floor so that we have some firm and binding, resolutions as how through a bill to ensure that some of the things that we wish to see happening happen. Thank you so much. Members, for obvious reasons, I'll not ask you to put the question this afternoon. We'll do that in the next sitting. I would therefore then call for the next order.
Order number 10, the Health Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2022, second reading.
Members, this bill is sponsored by the Honorable Didmas Barasa, who has written to the Speaker to defer this to the next sitting. Therefore, we will defer it. The next order.
Order number 11, the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2022, second reading.
Is Honorable Kingara in the House? Yes, Honorable Kingara, this chance is yours to move your bill for the second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I start by thanking you for giving me this opportunity to highlight on some amendment on the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill of 2022. Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Kingara. Just approach the table. Approach the table.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your wise guide. I beg to move the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2022, and may it be led for the second time. Mr. Speaker, I intend to move this bill as an amendment of the existing entire bill, especially on section 4 from A all the way to C, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at section 4 of the National Transport and Safety Authority Bill, you find that there are some issues which are of concern to us, and hence leading to a request from this Honorable House to do some amendment. My amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to insert the following new subparagraphs, especially on A, whereby it reads, I propose it reads, regulation of 2- and 3-wheeled public motorcycles taxis. Mr. Speaker, at part AB, I propose, Mr. Speaker, to establish a system and procedure for the regional registration and licensing of 2- and 3-wheeled public motorcycles or taxis. Mr. Speaker, if you go to section AC, I propose to establish a systems and procedures for the registration and licensing of drivers of 2- and 3-wheeled public motorcycles taxis by county government in conjunction with the authority. Mr. Speaker, I proceed to AD, where my proposal is to issue public service vehicles badges to drivers of 2- and 3-wheeled public motorcycles or taxis. Mr. Speaker, I end by SE, whereby I propose to have a regulate 2- and 3-wheeled public service motorcycles or taxi. Mr. Speaker, you find that long ago, motorcycles and 3-wheeler, which now we call tuk-tuk, was not in high demand sometimes back. But if you look at the current mood of the transport, you find that, as I stand here, Mr. Speaker, over 200 million motorbikes and tuk-tuks are operating in this world, led by Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and hence Kenya and the region. Mr. Speaker, you note the growth, the speed growth of the same trend, peaking, for instance, Thailand, which is in Eastern, and you know Africa copies a lot of on Eastern behavior. They have a population of 71 million people, whereby 87%, Mr. Speaker, are using motorbikes. Hence, this is like 43 million people using motorbike in that country. And if you come back now home to Kenya, you find that Kenya is just only 2% with about 5 million motorbikes, and hence it is not controllable. So, Mr. Speaker, my assumption is, when we reach like 10 million, will there be order, will there be soberness if we have not put light procedure, light control, and even light measures? Remember, Mr. Speaker, not long ago, motorbikes were not used as taxis. Tuk-tuks were not used as taxi before, so there was control. But you see, it has become like the mood of communication as far as mobility in our road is concerned. If the government or us are not aggressive on coming up with new and better legislation to manage the same menace, I think, Mr. Speaker, we will lose track. I know the government is trying to come up with the modalities of managing the same, but I think the speed on which the motorbikes are registered and they are put on our road is not in tandem. Mr. Speaker, if you look at, maybe one would pose a question. Should we do away with this motorbike menace, or what should be the way forward? Then I come to the Kenya Bureaus of Statistics, especially when they conducted a survey in 2019. They came up with the following. It was noted that the motorbike sector and tuk-tuk are generating over $1 billion for the economy of this country. So it's not something to put aside. If you go back to the same statistics, Mr. Speaker, you find that this $1 billion put on the GDP, it is generating about 3.4% of the national GDP. So you can see how this sector is growing. And it is just close to the education sector, Mr. Speaker, which stands at 3.8, and you know how old the education sector is. So if there is no stopgap measure on the control of boda boda and three-wheeler, I think we lose the track. Having said that, the other discomforting areas, Mr. Speaker, is the health sector. Many of our national hospitals, even the local hospitals, have set aside wards of health sectors, have put aside special units, if I can put that word that way, special units to manage the boda boda. It is a big concern. Even today, Mr. Speaker, when I was coming to this honorable house, there was an accident at Kasalani, and a body was lying there. And this is happening everywhere and anywhere in this country, and actually even in, the entire region. Kenya now being an orderly country, Mr. Speaker, it's our time to come up with the regulations, come up with the modalities, come up with the systems, and even come up with like vocational training for the same. Because if the government does not take a stand on this, I don't know who will do. Mr. Speaker, rather than just talking and leaving the matter open, I have tried to look on how maybe other people are doing it. And a good case study, Mr. Speaker, is Rwanda. Although Rwanda population is not like ours, they have come up with the regulations which are able to create some order or sanity, or as far as boda boda and tuk-tuk business on taxis. And remember, Mr. Speaker, I'm concentrating on taxis, whereby people are ferried using these tools and life is lost. Because those old days, these were just for cargo, kind of, but now it's a mode of transport and a mode of communication by the private sector and including the government itself, Mr. Speaker. Because if you look at our chiefs, they have been bought motorbikes. If you look at the Kenya Power, which is a government sector, they are using motorbikes and the like. So it's something which is here to stay and here to work with ourselves. So I have noted, Mr. Speaker, in some localities, like the county government level, they have come up with what I would call circles, whereby the motorbike sector in that region are made to be in a circle where there can be control, especially because of insecurity. You know, Mr. Speaker, the same motorbikes, apart from accident, they are also being used for other bad things, especially ferrying illicit brews, and also this hard drug, Mr. Speaker, because these small tools can close everywhere in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, In other words, there are some modalities or measures which can be taken and lead to what I would call sanity or control. Mr. Speaker, long ago, there were times whereby the government could use different number plates to identify or even to control the movement of vehicles and even understanding who is where and what is this person doing. I don't want to dwell on maybe coming up with number plates alone, but it can also lead to order, especially through circle, because if you put numbers which can lead to identifying the movement and the behavior of the tuk-tuk riders and motorcycle riders, I think we can be leading to what I would call a happy ending. Mr. Speaker, not forgetting that the economy also needs to grow, and we need to work with everybody in the same economy. And if you go to the growth of the same economy, Mr. Speaker, it's also good to note that with the consumption of petroleum and maybe gas, the same border is put like at an average of 300 shillings per day to the exchequer. And if you convert this to tax, the data shows that about 60 billion annually revenue can come from, or it's coming, or the government is generating about 60 billion from border and tuk-tuk sector as a revenue. And instead of losing this revenue, Mr. Speaker, I think it's a high time we come to what I would call order, whereby the sector can be learned professionally. How can this be learned professionally? Mr. Speaker, it's for this government and us to come up with new and better regulations, real-time regulations, which can adhere to the happening of the day, and even be submitted all the way down to the county level, where now in totality we can have a total control, and this now become a better or favorable income generating procedure, especially as far as these young people are concerned. Mr. Speaker, I think also because of lack of employment, our students after class form 4, they just rush to boda, where they can get earning for their livelihood. But if the national government, Mr. Speaker, can come up with maybe a vocational center in the entire county, may it be started by at county level, whereby each and every county we can come up with a vocational center where our boda riders can undertake short courses which can improve the standard of usage of the same machine. Mr. Speaker, that one can lead to a positive growth. Then, at the same time, we need also to come up with workshops at the county level, because even maintaining and managing these bodas, Mr. Speaker, is leading to high level of accidents. Even if a rider is a good rider, and then the motorbike is not repaired promptly or regularly, then the same can also lead to this manner of accident and bad behavior. Mr. Speaker, it has become a culture of riding motorbikes, so the culture is not going away. It is for us as the government to come up with new regulations which can manage the same. Mr. Speaker, because I know maybe there are members who would wish to share or contribute on this, I want to stop there and maybe request Honorable Haika, the Chair, Diaspora and Immigrant Workers, second. Thank you.
Honorable Haika.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I stand to support the amendment as proposed by Honorable Member, and I want to second.
Honorable members, I wish to propose that the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill number 43 of 2022 be read a second time. I'll give the first bite to the cherry to the Honorable Member for Embakasi. South Honorable, cannot see the card here. Honorable Mwade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to also give my support for the NTSA amendment bill, bill number 43 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, there is need to regulate the issues of transport in the country, and especially the issue of border as given and indicated by the mover. The issue of border need a little bit more regulations, because you'll find sometimes there's need for training before they are actually given the license to ride. Just like we have driver's license, we should make sure that we have a border license before the border operators are allowed to operate. Also, the enforcement on helmet has nowadays fizzled away. As it's not as it was in around the year 2020 when it was being enforced. But as we look to clamp down on these regulations, they also need to consider that the border industry is a very important industry, because a lot of our youth nowadays are earning their living through the being border riders. So there's huge, because of the huge unemployment amongst our youth, this is a good gap filler, or rather the border riders are able to fill the gap by sourcing, or rather getting their own source of income by being border riders. So yes, I support the bill, but also let's consider on ways to assist the border riders. We should establish a fund to assist the border riders for down payment, and then the balance can be paid in approximately maybe 6 to 8 months later. That will continue to help our youth in creating employment. With those few, I wish to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mawathe. The Honorable Mary Maingi, member for Mwea. She's not in. The Honorable Mary Maingi has stepped out. The Honorable Beatrice Kemei, member for Kericho County. The Honorable Ken Chonga, member for Kilifi South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity on this bill. Madam Speaker, history will tell us how important the border sector is. If you could recall, like some 30 years ago, sometimes it used to take the whole day for a public service vehicle to be available for communication for road users. And life by then, Madam Speaker, was very horrible. At times, if you miss the bus in the morning, you have to wait until the following day. That's when now you may be able to do your journey. Things have changed, but these things have changed for both better and worse. As I was listening keenly to the move of this bill, it really took me down to where I come from and look at the situation the way it is. Indeed, there is all the need, there is all the reason why this sector needs to be moderated, irrespective of all the good that it has brought to the country. Well, we have heard, even our former president last year came out openly to elect this sector of border sector on how much income generating it is making to the country and how it is contributing to the GDP. That is all good. But at the same time, so many things have really gone out of place. It's an industry that one can actually train in one day and ride the same day. Not taking cognizance of the consequences of any ill that may come a long way by riding a motorbike without knowing the regulations that the transporter require. As the mover said, Madam Speaker, within the East African region, we know this is a reliable mode of transport. But in some countries, things are done differently. I've actually been watching with dismay a border carrying 4 people when it is meant to carry 1 person. Honestly, that is a disaster that is in making, implying, therefore, something somewhere is not being done right. In Rwanda, for instance, Madam Speaker, a border will never and shall never carry more than 1 person. A border rider must have a helmet, and the passenger being carried must have a helmet. A border is not an exclusion to observing the traffic laws. When the lights are red, all PSV, all vehicles actually, all mobiles need to stop. But what is happening in Kenya? You find the lights are red, still the rider goes on. Then he meets an oncoming vehicle, accident happens. What kind of regulations are there to moderate this? Day in, day out, the numbers of border riders is increasing. Yet, the modalities under which we can put this sector in control are not there. I'm not saying that the border sector should be shut down. What I'm saying, Madam Speaker, here, we need to come up with a proper mechanism. Because if it is possible in Rwanda, I am very sure it is equally possible in Kenya. Most of the border riders are young people. These are the generations, this is the generation that we expect tomorrow to be able to move this economy to a second level. Go to Coast General Hospital, you'll find there is a separate ward that has been, there's a ward that has been actually with maintaining passenger accidents. I don't know why I should put it. Rather, there is a special ward to take care of border riders who get accident. Go to Kilifi, the story is the same. You come to Kenyatta, the story is the same. And for how long shall we sit and watch our young men and women actually die? The concern comes here, and I think this bill is so timely to serve the generation to come. Put proper structures. If possible, there should be demarcated areas where the border riders should be riding to avoid loss of lives, to avoid accidents, and also even to avoid injuring the other parties who may not be party to this accident. Madam Speaker, I stand to support this bill.
Very well, member for Kilifi South. I can see an intervention by the Honorable Mawathe, member for Embakasi South. What is out of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to recognize and acknowledge the presence of Ruben Primary from Embakasi South constituency in the gallery, led by the head teacher, Madam Nancy Motai. Thank you. And these are the leaders that are elected in Ruben Primary, the student leaders within the school. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Mawathe, I know that you have recognized a school from your constituency, but be informed that they had already been recognized by the Speaker. Let's proceed, honorable members. The Honorable Geoffrey Ruku, member from Mbeere North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this amendment bill. The transport sector in the Republic of Kenya, Madam Speaker, need a lot of, streamlining so that it can take care of the emerging issues. The economy is growing, the population is growing, and Madam Speaker, there's no law that is retrogressive. Law must be progressive, and it must be progressive in terms of the changes which are happening within the society, and more so the changes which are happening within the transport sector of the Republic of Kenya. As mentioned within the articulation of the honorable member, the border sector has grown, and it is huge in each and every constituency in the Republic of Kenya, and this needs to be well regulated by a well-thought law. And this has come at a time when the NTSA and other related supporting sectors need to be relooked in a proper manner. Madam Speaker, the NTSA plays a very critical role, and it is well placed within the Ministry of Interior, as it is opposed. Many would think that it should be placed within the Ministry of Transport, and it is placed within the Ministry of Interior because of its critical, the critical factors, or the critical essence, the critical role that it plays to facilitate the economy. So, Madam Speaker, I support this amendment and urge the entire House to fully support so that we can regulate this sector in the most appropriate manner, but also to look at the emissions, more probably in the future amendment, the emissions which are affecting our environment. And these emissions come as a result of huge, many vehicles and many engines which probably are not very, very well calibrated and don't meet the required standard, and hence end up emitting huge amount of carbon into the environment from the transport sector. This is something which can be looked at in the future amendment of the same act. I support, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ruku. Now, the next one is the Honorable Innocent Mugambe, member for Lukuyani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I wish to support the amendment motion by saying that the border sector in the country should be looked at as part and parcel of the transport system. For a very long time, people, or rather, we've been dehumanizing this sector, but it is indeed an important sector in terms of transport, of movement of people and goods in the country. Many parts of this country, Madam Speaker, have very poor road network, a very inefficient transport system, and the people who come in to aid in moving people and goods in such areas are the borders. And we must give credit to this. In 2008, when the import duty on these motorcycles that are below 250cc were given, they would come in the country with duty-free import. But despite it helping in aiding the transport sector in the country, it is also maligned with a number of issues because of lack of proper policy, proper policy and regulation framework in the sector. In the border sector, we've seen gangs taking advantage of the ease of movement of borders to rob people. We've seen them being unruly. We've seen people riding borders without licenses. We've seen people giving their children motorcycles to drive, and this has led to a lot of losses of life and other societal menace. In 2019, in NTSA report, we saw that the deaths from borders were actually more than deaths that came from motor vehicles, drivers, and their passengers. So this basically calls for a total paradigm shift on how the structure and management of the border sector is handled in this country. This calls for policy shifts to address the problems and challenges that are brought about by the border sector in order, one, to save lives of the riders and the passengers. Number two, to create harmony and proper structures in the sector, and to allow our young people and other investors in the sector to benefit from it. But this, to me, as I would like to support the mover that NTSA should work this in close collaboration with county governments because of the sheer numbers of borders, because of their proximity to access county offices, such that the counties will also play a big role in terms of regulating the border sector. I support, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Samburu County, Honorable Pauline.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Lengoris.
Lengoris is my name. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute on the motion of amendment that is in the floor of this House. And I want to thank the member for bringing up this issue, because I think the border issue is an issue that has affected the whole of this country. We also understand that the border sector is a very important sector in the economy of our country, particularly in the area where I come from. We have a lot of challenges with the road networks, and most of places are impassable with the vehicles, and the border has come as a relief to most of the residents of Samburu County. So this is a very important sector to particularly people of the northern Kenya who have a very bad road networks. The border sector is also very important because it has created a lot of employment to majority of our youths who could have been staying idle at home and doing nothing. So most of the youths who are unemployed have engaged into the sector, and the sector has become their daily bread. They feed their families through the border sector. They also educate their children through the border sector, and it has created employment to most of them. And we thank this sector for allowing them to engage into this kind of work. It has also, the border sector has also brought a lot of revenue, especially to the counties and even to the national government, because they are also paying the levies, and they have also contributed to the growth of the economy of our country. Madam Speaker, there are challenges that are associated with the border sector in this country. It is true that we have experienced a lot of accidents caused by the border, because we feel that there is a lot that needs to be done to regulate the border sector and the transport sector in general. Because I think most of the border riders just buy the border and go to the road without even understanding the road signs and also the rules that are pertaining to the kind of business that they engaged in. So we call upon the transport sector to try and regulate this kind of transport, because we have experienced a lot of accidents You go to most of our hospitals, as has been raised by the mover of this motion, most of the accidents are caused by the borders. And we have also lost a lot of lives of the young people. So I will agree with our members here that a lot needs to be done. It's a very important sector to all of us, and a lot needs to be done by the Transport Ministry together with NTSA, because the border riders need to be educated, they need to be guided, they need to be supported with the trainings, they need to be shown always on how to do the riding and to be safe, and also to be safe on the passengers that they are carrying. So I stand up to support this motion and request that we should move on to regulate this important sector such that our people will be educated, they will be supported, they will be trained, and they will be shown on how to engage into the business safely to reduce on the kind of accidents that we are currently experiencing. Madam Speaker, we have also experienced a lot of harassment because we engage ourselves as members of parliament because we represent people. The members of the transport sector, especially the border riders, have also been harassed so much by the police because of corruption. The little they get from the work they do, much of it goes to the police because of the corruption that we experience on our roads. So, Madam Speaker, together with the amendments that we are bringing to this motion, I think the transport sector need to get the police out of the corruption they are engaging right now, so that they will do their work without interfering with the little that the border riders get, and do their work without requiring them to pay them money when there is something wrong with the motorbikes, so that we can be able to reduce the accidents we are experiencing now. And also, the border riders will engage into the business knowing that there are rules and regulations that governs the kind of work they are doing. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support the amendment motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Narok North. Member for Narok North. Please try to trace the Honorable Member for Narok North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to put my voice on the amendments of this bill and to support the mover and to thank him for thinking about our youth. And the border sector is a very important sector, and it needs to be supported. Therefore, I support the amendment by the NTSA to make sure that they put the regulations to make sure that these young men or our youth are comfortable as they carry on with their activities, because that is the only source of livelihood that they have. And as Parliament, we know that these young people are our supporters, they vote for us, and we need to make sure that they are also comfortable when they are carrying on with the work that they do. And it's important for us to make sure that, for NTSA to make sure that these young men are trained so that they can have helmets to make sure that the rider and the passengers are safe, and also be supported to make sure that these young men have some shelter wherever they work, because this is another form of being employed, and that's how they earn their living. And you remember when we are doing our politics, we always promise them that we will protect them, we will make sure that they are comfortable, and the only way that we can make sure that they are comfortable is by making sure that these orders, regulations are there to protect them, so that they can also carry on with their work comfortably. And also, I would urge the police to give these young men an opportunity to look for an earning, because that is the only way they can support their families and their children, because they harass them. It's like when you look at that business, people look at it like it is a business that is not genuine. Yet, when you are in a hurry, you sometimes even tell your bodyguard, please, can you rush using a boda to where we want, or deliver this message to whoever it's going to be delivered to. So we need to take it seriously, and we need to support it to make sure that they get their licenses, they are helped to get their licenses and supported, and to make sure that they have helmets, to make sure that they also have shelter. And the government should chip in to make sure that these people are trained, so that they don't just buy a boda and then the next day they are there riding it, yet they don't even know the laws that they are supposed to follow as they ride their bodas. So I stand to support the amendments and also thank the mover for bringing this very important discussion here so that we can chip in and support our youth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Cecilia Gitit, member for Turkana County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion and congratulate the mover. Madam Speaker, border sector is a necessary evil to all of us, and more specifically to the northern Kenya, as well put by my colleague from Samburu, where there are no roads. Border remains our ambulances. They remain our best mode of transport because most of our roads are impassable, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, border sector has contributed a lot to our economy, and it has created jobs to the young people of this nation. Madam Speaker, at this moment when fuel prices are very high, motorbikes remain the best mode of transport because their fuel consumption is low and they are cost effective, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, considering all that, the border sector faces various challenges. One challenge is the failure by the NTSA to train the border riders, Madam Speaker. These people just buy these motorbikes, they go into the roads without knowing the road uses, the safety measures on the road, and all that pertains road use. And this accounts to the high number of accidents we witness in our country, Madam Speaker. The border riders are also facing exploitation by the police, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the border riders are also facing exploitation by the owner of the motorbikes. If you look at the arrangements these people get these motorbikes, some of them you will have to pity them. You find that an owner of the bicycle gives a young boy the bike, then at the end of the day, the owner of the bike has to be given, let's say 500 shillings, Madam Speaker. And now that the borders are many in these stages, transport stages, you find that at the end of the day, the young man has not made even a single shilling, but at the end of the day, he has to give the owner of the bike 500 shillings at the end of the day. So it is a challenge, Madam Speaker. The other exploitation these people are facing, Madam Speaker, is exploitation by the credit facility firms. There are these firms that are giving border the bikes so that they are paid maybe on weekly basis. And looking at the difficulty we are going through now, the economic hard times, Madam Speaker, the border riders are not making good money to enable them pay these firms that are giving them these bikes on credit. So you find that, Madam Speaker, most of them can service a loan, and then when it has remained very little amount, as little as 2,000 shillings, the firm comes and repossesses the bike. Yet someone has already serviced the bike, paid around 180,000, and it is repossessed for failing to pay only 2,000 shillings. Madam Speaker, there are many regulations that this August House should consider so that we cushion our young people from exploitation of this nature, Madam Speaker. I therefore support this motion that NTSA should really look into this matter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Turkana. The Honorable Kamene, Member for Machakos County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this amendment bill. Madam Speaker, we are all aware that the border industry plays a huge role in the transport sector in this country. This sector has mushroomed in the last couple of years in a very dynamic way, of which, when we look at it, we can say the government was not prepared for this kind of mushrooming. And that is why, at a time like this, proper planning is really needed so that to bring this sector into order. In fact, the NTSA ought to sit down with the Ministry of Roads to ensure that these borders are given their lane when it comes to the road, because it's like they are taken for granted, and they have to squeeze themselves as they maneuver to transport people from one station to another. And also, when it comes to the health, to their health, insurance has to be considered, and they have to be given nice and friendly packages that will make them, when they get accidents, that they are able to receive treatment well. This sector is serving a great role in our transport, because it has created employment for our youth. It has also helped this business to thrive in a special way. The hustlers, or let's say the low income generating, and especially the market women that go to Sokos early in the morning, this sector really plays a big role. And it is high time also the police force gives this sector the respect, and they ought to work together to ensure that the border sector gets its face the way it is required, because it's like they are somehow taken for granted. And we know this is a sector that is very dear to this country. I support the amendments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Wajir North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I contribute to the debate, I would wish to bring to your attention that catching the Speaker's eye has become a serious challenge for members of Parliament. We have to do so electronically, but at times you will meet that the challenges keep on going, and those who are on top are least considered. This is just for your attention.
Honorable member, you are completely out of order. You are out of order totally.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But honestly, it is in our rules. Mr. Speaker, in contributing to the motion, I really agree with the intent and purpose of the amendment by my colleague. The motorcycle sector is of immense importance to this economy, but it has not been regulated, not because there are no laws sufficient enough to do the regulation, but I believe that is an oversight on the part of the agencies concerned. The NTCA Act being amended, sought to be amended 43 of 2022, Mr. Speaker, must be read with the Traffic Act. Indeed, the motorcycle, whether it is 3-cycle or 2-cycle, is a motor vehicle. That means it comes under the purview of the Traffic Act, and it is so defined very well. It is mechanically propelled vehicle. So it should be well understood that when we are seeking this amendment, it is read alongside other statutes that are in existence, and we only improve on what exists than bringing conflicts between different statutes. However, the motorcycle sector has been growing immensely. It has provided jobs, employment, swift transports, more so in unmotorable roads, Mr. Speaker. However, it has had serious challenges. There was lack of training, there is lack of licensing and regulation on the part of NTSA. For me, there is no lacuna in law. It is sleeping on the job on the part of NTSA. Why we always drag in the police for corruption? It is because they are not licensed, they don't seek training, they don't follow the laid down procedures, Mr. Speaker. From where I come from, it only goes for a camel to acquire a motorcycle. And you are on the road the next hour, immaterial of whether there is a police officer. They don't know because of the illiteracy rate. They don't know that there are regulations that one has to conform to. So it is an issue of really an outreach than our limitations on the part of our legislations, Mr. Speaker. This must be well understood. They are numerous. I really agree with actually the intention of the mover to regulate this sector, but it is an issue of implementation, enforcement, than coming up with enforcement as such. Motorcycles have been defined actually to an extent that a motorcycle is a public service vehicle. If you look at the definitions that precede the Traffic Act, it is not a matatu, it is not a motor car, it is a motorcycle, yet a motor vehicle, and yet can carry passenger, but to a limit. This should be very clear in the minds of, before we contribute. However, Mr. Speaker, I think what we need is coordination. The fact that the mover has alluded...
What is out of order? You are carrying your hands up. Okay, go ahead.
One important aspect the mover has alluded to, the fact that we must have coordination between county governments and NTSA on the part of the national government, will create more chaos to an already chaotic sector, Mr. Speaker, in my view. We should have one national inventory, one national system to supervise, regulate, license this sector, in my view. I can't see why Wajir should have a different plate for its motorcycles, different from Kiambu. Of late, the motorcycles, as much as they are important to the economy, they have also been serious contributors to crime in this nation. They are being used to traffic human beings, mostly aliens. They are being used to traffic drugs from Ethiopia. They are being used to traffic weapons, arms that are being used in the cattle rustling, more so in the North Rift and the Isiolo regions. They are a menace for sure, a nuisance. That doesn't mean that we are deficient of laws. All we need, do we really enforce our laws as we pass in this House? With those few clarifications, mine is to say that the sector is very important, yet laden with a lot of risks. The risk of owning a motorcycle, the risks that they contribute to the crime in this country. In Wajir North, where I represent, Mr. Speaker, it is on the Ethiopian border. Motorcycles are used to bring in cannabis sativas up to Nairobi, using unmotorable roads. They are used to bring aliens to the city of Nairobi. Motorcycles are used to transport guns that are being used in cattle rustling in Rift Valley. Actually, the government should invest on our borders. On our borders, if we are to maintain cattle rustling in North Rift, because we are the ones, these motorcycles are the ones that provide the weapons that are being used to kill, maim, break bones, and actually kill people in North Rift. Yes, I do appreciate the sector is important. I don't stand and agitate for its abolishment. However, it requires stringent, thorough, tough regulations. And the regulations do exist. It is just calling upon the NTSA to do its part. It's like they are sleeping on the job. They are not doing their work. The laws are there. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the intent and purpose of the amendment, but I could kindly seek your guidance to make sure that it is read with existing laws before we make amendments. Thank you.
Well said, Honorable Sane. This chance goes to the member for Runyanjes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And from the onset, I wish to support this amendment because the border industry and the three-wheeled industry is an industry that is accommodating very many young people since the introduction of these borders during Kibaki time. Mr. Speaker, we will all admit that thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people are into this business, trying to earn a living, trying to educate their children through the income that they get from this industry. And so there is need to regulate to ensure that NTSA comes up with the regulations that will ensure that this sector is streamlined. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to most of the young people who are in this industry, they'll tell you that they are harassed so much by the police. And this happens mainly due to sometimes lack of these regulations and the enforcement of the existing ones. So we need to cause and to push NTSA to come up with ways of regulating this industry, because it is likely that in the coming years, Mr. Speaker, we will have so many people in this industry, in this business, because we believe it contributes so much to the creation of jobs. Mr. Speaker, most of us have been out there in the Western countries, and even in some of the African countries, and you will see how orderly this industry is in some other countries. And for example, Rwanda. And this is because of the regulations that are there and the enforcement of the same. So NTSA has a duty to do, to come up with more regulations so that we can cushion these people from the harassment they get from the police. And also, in the same spirit, Mr. Speaker, cushion the border from the exploitation, like it has been said by one of the honorable members here, whereby a young person who is trying to find something to do will go and borrow a border for 100,000 or so, maybe around 120,000, and they end up paying up to 250,000 for a motorcycle that they borrowed at 120. Yeah, so more than half of the cost of the border goes to some of these institutions that are giving credit to our young people. So, Mr. Speaker, very soon I'll be coming up with an amendment that will seek to caution these young people who are in the border industry from the exploitation from the institutions that are offering this credit. You fail to pay for the border, or you delay in paying the installment, they come and collect so much money in an effort to buy or to acquire a motorcycle. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I wish to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Bonchari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to this very important proposed amendment. The border subsector is very important in the economy because of its contribution in transportation of people. You look around the country, as a matter of fact, in the region, you find that the only mode of transport that is left is border. And on top of that, it has created employment for many people who otherwise would go without food on their tables. However, there are challenges that face this sector, very important sector, as I've already said. The fact that many of the riders are not trained and they cause accidents. You go to any county hospital, you go to any health center in the countryside, most of the patients are because of accidents caused by border riders. Therefore, in as much as we want to support them, let's also be careful so that we don't end up over-regulating this sector, because what's proposed here are two layers of regulation, one by the NTCA and by the county governments. And when you over-regulate a sector, there's the risk of associated costs, like the taxes, that NTCA will inevitably levy on these, the riders. The county government will levy another set of taxes. And as it is now, many riders, particularly I come from in Bonchari, they are not able to operate because it's become very expensive. The cost of fuel is very high, and many of them are parked their motorbikes. So let's be careful so that we don't add more problems to a sector that is already struggling and over-regulating it. Mr. Speaker, too, as we discuss this further, let's be cognizant that there are other laws that are in place. Have we used them properly to their full extent that we are asking for this amendment? So that if we are saying that NTCA comes in to regulate this sector, it is in itself giving the NTCA absolute powers for regulating this sector without reference to Parliament, like is the practice that any regulating, anybody that is making regulations makes reference to Parliament through the delegated legislation committee. So let's be careful with the wording of this amendment so that we don't take away that power in Parliament, and NTCA and any other entity that is involved in the regulation runs away from Parliament. I'm a member of the delegated legislation committee, and some of the problems we encounter are that these bodies that make regulations sometimes want to avoid Parliament, and they go ahead and make the regulations and publish them and start using them. So this could be an avenue for such bodies making regulations without reference to Parliament, and therefore taking away the role of making laws from Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Bureti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I'm a member of the Transport Committee.
Just a minute. Honorable Member for Kwanza, you are completely out of order. You can't keep on putting pressure on me to give you a chance to speak, and you are not even on the queue. It's not the way it's done. That's not the way it's done. Go on, Member for Bureti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to respond also on behalf of the committee. First, I would want to acknowledge the amendments that are being proposed by Honorable Simon Kingara, MP for Ruiru constituency, on the matter that is before us this afternoon. Importantly is that the committee wish to let the House know that we are in support of all the proposals, that the reforms being proposed on the border sector, and also the proposals that are to enforce compliance and enhance safety within the sector. Personally, I am of the opinion that there is so much chaos within the border sector that needs to be relooked, that invites us to relook at all the laws and regulations that govern the border sector. Mr. Speaker, Section 4.2a of the NTSA Act empowers the authority to undertake the registration of all motor vehicles. So the actual question about registration of two-wheeler or three-wheeler motorcycles or any other vehicle that are there has been provided for. It's also the view of the committee, having listened to Honorable Kingara and having listened to the Ministry of Transport through the PS Transport, having listened also to other stakeholders, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that we thought that the amendments being proposed are already provided for within the NTSA Act. On the question of registration of motor vehicles and also registrations of two-wheeler or three-wheeler motorcycle taxis within the counties, it should be remembered, Mr. Speaker, that registration is a national function. And therefore, to be able to co-share this function with the county governments may actually need that we amend our constitution so that we may be able to have those two share. The question actually that was being addressed here, Mr. Chair, is perhaps the introduction of how to share information between the county governments and the national governments, in particular to the registration of taxis and also the vehicles within the counties. Furthermore, the licensing of motorcycles, taxis, is already provided for under the regulations, hence no need to introduce amendments to the NTSA Act. And that the issue of registration of motorcycles by regions, as proposed by Honorable Kingara, will go against the established UN conventions on road traffic. The Road Traffic Convention of 1968, which Kenya is a party to, provides for recognition of national and not regional licenses. And thus the amendment would therefore be in conflict with these statutes that the country has entered into. Secondly, third, actually, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of public service vehicle badges and also the management of the SACCOs as intimated by the honorable member may be something that we may be able to pursue within the current provisions of the Act. There were also some proposals by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers about the simplicity by which we can be able to effect these changes or these proposals within the industry, the transport industry. Mr. Speaker, when we met the transport minister through the permanent secretary, they actually informed the committee that there were broader, more elaborate proposals that they had on the safety, on the running of SACCOs, on the management of the whole transport sector, and in particular, border sector, to be able to bring back sanity and to be able to make sure that they are compliant and also avoid the harassment. The whole question of the cost of borders, the whole question of empowering the borders, the whole question of actually the hustler movement, and a part of it also are being looked at by the ministry. Therefore, the committee observed as follows, Mr. Speaker, that the proposed amendments in the bill, as formulated by the honorable member, were already provided for in the National Transport and Safety Authority Act of number 33 of 2012. Further, the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill, the National Assembly Bills of number 43 of 2022, emanated from the issues of laxity in implementation, compliance, and enforcement of the existing law and regulations, that the law is clear, the law is adequate, that there is actually no lacuna within our laws to be able to implement these things. It's a call upon actually the Ministry of Interior to be able to see to it that these laws are properly implemented in consultation with the riders and the relevant county governments within which they operate, to be able to facilitate the smooth flow and also the question of sanity within the sector. The NTSA Operations Motor Vehicles Amendment Regulation 2022 provide for the licensing of motor vehicle taxis by the county governments. In March 2022, and as you may be aware, actually, Mr. Speaker, the government launched a national registration processing of 2- and 3-wheeler public service motor vehicles, and the same is to be done within the NTSA portal. There are inexistent regulations formulated in 2015 that provide for the motorcycles should have a third-party insurance, PSV, the riders have valid driving licenses, and the operators be registered members of the SACCO. Having considered the bill and taken into account, the committee therefore was of the view and recommends as follows: that the House rejects the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill and National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2022 in its entirety, and actually the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport should review the National Transport and Safety Authority Operations of Motor Vehicles Amendment Regulations 2022 to be able to take care of the issues that were raised by...
Honorable Komingoi, I notice you are reading...
I'm not reading, actually, I'm actually contributing, referring to the notes, sir. Yes. So that you can be able to have the issues that have been raised. Because the whole question, actually, Honorable Kingara was raising up is on only 3 items. 1, registration and compliance to the law. 2, safety. 3, organization of the border industry. It's our opinion, and which we thought through as a committee, that all these are provided for, except that its implementation, its supervision, and the compliance to this law are not being implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much. As we proceed, members, allow me to recognize and welcome to the Assembly students from Kamarandi Secondary School of Mbere North in Embu County, and Nyahururu Vision Academy of Oljorok, Nyandarua County. They are welcome to follow proceedings of the House this afternoon. This chance go to the member for Kitui South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to contribute to this amendment bill that is being proposed by the Honorable Kingara. Honorable Speaker, first, I have listened to the member for Bureti. I am a little bit disoriented, but I will still proceed to support the bill because of the subjects that the Honorable Kingara is targeting. Mr. Speaker, ensuring that these border borders are regulated, because, Honorable Speaker, they are in our constituencies and we know the level of disorganization that we see. So whether it's happening in this bill or in a regulation, Mr. Speaker, I would like to state that I support the bill that has been brought. Mr. Speaker, we cannot ignore the importance of border in our county, in our country, in our counties, and in our constituencies. And Mr. Speaker, this is a big business opportunity that has presented itself where our young people, both male and female, are participating, and they are able to bring up their families, pay school fees using border. Honorable Speaker, I would like to support that there is a need to ensure that this registration is done. And when it is being done, if it is possible that it is attached to the driver and the motorbike that they are driving, so that the people at the county and at the national level, including the office of the chiefs and assistant chiefs, are able to tell where these borders are operating, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also to be able to trace them, if it is possible, even to go further, to trace them, to be able to tell where did they start their journey, which places did they go, and where did they end. Because, Honorable Speaker, this will also deal with the issue of crime. Honorable Speaker, I would also like to link this matter of border to lack of licensing, where most of them are lying in our hospitals. Honorable Speaker, in our level 3, level 4, level 5, and our national hospitals are full of culprits of accidents through the border sector. Clearly, this shows that people are driving these borders without having been trained. Worst, Honorable Speaker, is where we found young people who are underage also being border drivers. Honorable Speaker, this is not even a matter of the change on this bill, but also enforcing the law where people who do not even have identity cards are finding themselves being in the border sector, participating and getting into accidents, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to encourage the committee and also the Honorable Kingara that as they look at this, it is extremely important also to link with other committees that may be involved in this. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have noticed that our young people are suffering, especially those who have gotten into contracts that they may not understand. Because when someone is buying a boda, they do not look at the percentages of the full amount that they have to pay. And, Honorable Speaker, I would like to give an example of an institution that has made many, many Kenyans to suffer, and I'll use the word allegedly because of the business aspect that is attached to this, called WATU. Honorable Speaker, in my constituency, young your boda riders come to me and they tell me, Mheshimiwa, my motorbike is being taken away by WATU. Another one comes and tells me my boda is being taken by WATU. So when I followed up, I realized that it is an institution that has given so many of them the bodas. And when I looked at the payments that they've done, some of them are paid up to 160,000, 170,000, and then they lose it at that point. So it is a serious matter that needs to be looked at. As we talk about regulating the boda sector itself, we need to look for a way of also protecting these people, such that when they are getting into this contract, there is somebody who assists them to look at how much is it that they are going to pay at the end of the day, and for how long, because some of them have exorbitant percentages, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will not forget the issue of crime. Honorable Speaker, these bodas, some of them, because some are very good, but there are others who are involved in crime, stealing, ability to hide, ability to pass without being noticed. Honorable Speaker, this needs to be looked at. And Mr. Speaker, before I sit, I would like to also ask for a way of my young girls to be protected. Because, Mr. Speaker, a boda driver is a very important person in the villages that we come from. And some of them have the ability to lure the young girls into early sexual activities, immorality. Mr. Speaker, this one, Honorable Speaker, I talk about it as a woman member of parliament, and to say that this also needs to be looked into. It is just indiscipline, but it is clearly linked to some, and I insist on some, of the boda drivers, where we have early pregnancies, we have HIV/AIDS, which is being transmitted because of the privilege that they have of transporting these young people. Honorable Speaker, I would like to say that I support the Honorable Kingara, that it is important to have this regulated, and also hearing the concerns of the committee, but I would like to say that I fully support this amendment to the NTSA Act. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Honorable Kingara, I hope you're listening and taking notes. If you listen to what the committee is saying and what members are saying, I'm sure there could be a middle ground on dealing with the most important issues of the day concerning the whole sector. You notice it's now come down to boda specifically and how they behave and the rest. And so I hope we can, nudge the bill towards that direction. The member for Sirisia.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance also to contribute on this. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this bill, the amendment bill. The Speaker, boda plays a very important role in this country, right from the constituencies where we come from, counties. Honorable Speaker, the regulations that we are debating to put, Mr. Speaker, it must be tough regulations, Mr. Speaker, because NTSA, Mr. Speaker, in my view, I think NTSA is sleeping on job, Honorable Speaker. Why, Mr. Speaker, we have traveled to many countries, like us parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, and we have seen the regulations and rule of laws that are in those countries, Mr. Speaker. They are respected. Mr. Speaker, here in Kenya, the riders do not respect the rule of law because of NTSA maybe not taking action all the time. And Mr. Speaker, it has resulted into loss of lives. Many people, many families, Mr. Speaker, have lost their life just because of, Mr. Speaker, we as a House, as we are going to pass these regulations, Mr. Speaker, that was brought by the Honorable Kingar, Mr. Speaker, we need, as members of this House, to make sure that this bill, we pass it, because we have some lawyers in this House, Mr. Speaker, even as I'm sitting here, in front of me there are 2 lawyers here. So, Mr. Speaker, they must get involved so that the amendments could be done properly to save lives of our people. The challenge is, Mr. Speaker, that the riders get sometimes, Mr. Speaker, in my view, Mr. Speaker, sometimes they get involved in crime. They can carry people carrying guns. They can carry people carrying drugs like bank and other things, Honorable Speaker. So the regulation must, we must check on that. They contribute immensely, Mr. Speaker, on the economy of this country, Mr. Speaker. They contribute about 10 billion Kenya shillings to our GDP, which is very, very, that's not little money, Mr. Speaker. So they are important in many aspects. Moving to where a vehicle cannot reach, where there is narrow roads or bad roads, Mr. Speaker, these border riders do important jobs, Mr. Speaker. So members of this House, Mr. Speaker, need to pass this bill, and so that we help these young people who are also struggling to put the food on their table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Member for Kandui.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also weigh in on the amendment that is before the House. First, I must say that the border sector plays a very, very critical role in our country, not only in offering jobs for our young and very desperate people, but also in contributing to the economy of this particular country. I know for a fact, Honorable Speaker, maybe I will not be in this particular House without the contribution of the border sector in moving us to all the places to seek for votes. I have looked at the amendment, Honorable Speaker, and the bill seeks to amend the NTSA Act to introduce, to establish systems and procedures for regional registration and licensing of 2- and 3-wheeled public motorcycle taxis. My starting point was, do we have a lacuna in the law, or do we have an omission in the law? And my quick starting point was the NTSA Act itself. And I've looked at the NTSA Act, and particularly Section 4 of that particular Act, Honorable Speaker. The Act provides for the actual registration and licensing. So when it comes to whether there's a lacuna in the law, I would say there isn't a lacuna in the law with regard to licensing and registration of border. But what problem do we have? Of course, Honorable Speaker, if you move to our respective constituencies and areas we represent, and you visit our hospitals, you will find specific wards that have been set aside for people who have been involved in accidents that are involving borders. If you walk to the police station, the traffic sections, you'll find a lot of motorbikes that have been parked there that have been involved up in road accidents. It's not also lost on us, Honorable Speaker, that just even a week ago, we lost an honorable member of this House, courtesy of a border incident. So as we move up on this, we need to ask ourselves the key question: what is the difficulty? What is the problem we have in the border sector? In my view, Honorable Speaker, it is not the absence of regulations and laws. I agree with the spirit and intent of the bill, which seeks to drive sanity into the border sector. But I do not agree with amendments being proposed for the following reasons. One, the amendment seeks to introduce regional licensing. I am looking at this particular instance where, for example, a border person is licensed.
Dr. Boruku, you've spoken on this bill. What is out of order? On this particular bill, you've already spoken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the school at the gallery comes from my constituency, very north. And I want to...
that can be a point of order, really. That can be a point of order. We note that you have students from your constituency here, and that's it. You allow the member to proceed now with his contribution.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was worried what was out of order, but thank you for protecting me. I can proceed. The bill seeks to introduce regional licensing. I'm imagining, Your Honor, if, Honorable Speaker, if a border rider is licensed, let's say in Bungoma County, and is carrying a passenger to, let's say, Busia County, where he is not licensed, what will happen to him? When he reaches there, he will be deemed an unlicensed rider, and is bound to fall into problems with the traffic and NTSA. I have a problem with the issue of licensing. Two, if we look at, of course, this is the National Assembly. The National Assembly legislates nationally. If we look at Schedule 4 of our Constitution, the Constitution is very clear that matters relating to transport and licensing within the counties are basically left with the counties. Are we, Honorable Speaker, by virtue of this particular amendment, trying to take over the work of our county assemblies that have a duty to license transport and motorcycles and borders within their respective areas of jurisdiction? The third issue which I have is that in my short search, I have discovered there are several pieces of legislation that have been enacted by this House that will tackle the issue we are having at the moment. And specifically, I want to make reference to the Public Motorcycles Regulation 9.5 of the NTSA Operation of Motorcycle Amendment Regulations of 2022 that were passed by this House, that were to deal with the issues of licensing and regulation of borders within the respective centers. I also wish to make reference to Legal Notice number 121 of 2022, NTSA Operation of Motorcycles Amendment Regulations 2022, that provide for the registration of border taxis, SACCOs, as well as their licensing by county governments. So, Honorable Speaker, while I agree with the spirit and intent of the Act, my only difficulty is, are we not trying to legislate over what we already have legislation? What we need to enforce, basically, is basically the NTSA to be able to do its mandate, because I think there is a lapse on the part of the NTSA in discharging its mandate. Otherwise, I support the spirit and intent of the amendment, but I do not support the amendments, because the committee, which actually is a committee of this House, the Transport Committee, invited all the stakeholders to make their presentations on this bill. And it has brought its verdict before this House. And this verdict is these amendments ought to be rejected because they are already covered up by specific legislation that is there. And, Honorable Speaker, as a member of this House, I go by the committee of this House in rejecting the amendments. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mbafo Kisauni.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kunipa fursa ya kupenyeza sauti yangu
kwenye uzungumzi huu wa bodaboda. Mheshimiwa Spika, bodaboda ni usafiri muhimu sana, inatumika katika taifa nzima. Taifa zima, hukuna mahali utaenda mjini, vijijini ukakosa hilo neno bodaboda ama ukakosa kuwaona katika shughuli zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile vile bodaboda imepunguza uhalifu. Vijana wengi wamejihusisha na kupeleka pikipiki ili kusudi wapate riziki zao. Ni njia nzuri sana ambayo imesaidia upungufu mkubwa katika upande wa ajira. Kwa sababu ingelikuwa hakuna hiyo bodaboda, ingekuwa na shida kubwa sana, msongamano wa vijana wasiokuwa na kazi. Na bodaboda, Mheshimiwa Spika, katika sehemu zingine zinatumika kama ambulance za kubebea wagonjwa, hasa sehemu ambazo barabara zao ni mbaya. Kwa hivyo bodaboda ni jambo muhimu sana, ama ni usafiri muhimu, ama ni sekta muhimu ambayo inahitaji kwamba iangaliwe kwa zuri na kuboreshwa vipi wataendeleza shughuli zao. Ni kweli ajali ni nyingi sana katika upande huo, na hata kama wazungumzaji waliozungumza, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ziko wodi katika hospitali ambazo zimetengewa watu wa bodaboda tu, kwa sababu wanaletwa kwa wingi sana, na ile hasa inasababishwa na kutokuwa na mafunzo ama kwenda training kuhusu upelekaji huo. Na ni sekta ambayo ina umaskini mkubwa sana. Maskini wengi sana wanatumia hiyo bodaboda ama shughuli hiyo za kibiashara hizo. Sasa wengi wanashindwa kwenda katika mafunzo, shule za mafunzo, kwa sababu ni ghali. Sasa tuje na taratibu kuonesha kwamba kule pia katika kufundishwa kwao kuwe na tahfifu, kuwe na fedha kidogo ambazo wale mwanabodaboda anaweza kwenda kufundishwa ili ajue sheria za kanuni za barabara. Kwa sababu wengi wanashindwa kwenda kwa sababu hali ni ngumu. Yeye mwenyewe bodaboda anatakaniwa mpe mwenye Honda 500 kama ni 1000, akitoka pale na shilingi 400. So Mheshimiwa Spika, tuje na taratibu hapa, tuone vipi wao watakuwa na tahfifu ya kwenda kufundishwa ile ujuzi ili kusudi waendeleze shughuli hiyo. Bodaboda na tuktuk ni kitu muhimu sana ambazo sisi kama bunge la kitaifa tuje na taratibu ya kuona vipi tutawasaidia. Hata serikali za ugatuzi ni haki wao wawekee viegezo ama wawekee sehemu ambazo wao wataekeza zile bodaboda zao, hasa wakati wa mvua, wakati wa jua, wao watajengewa sehemu ambazo kutakuwa na nafasi ya wao kujikinga na vitu hivyo kwa ukali wa mvua na jua. Na hata vile tunasema sisi wapeane helmet, kila mtu avae helmet, lazima watengezewe sehemu ambazo helmet zitakuwa nyingi. Iziwe pale kuna wao wenyewe watakuwa na taratibu ya kwamba ikiwa abiria huyu ashachukuliwa ameenda, akirudi helmet ile inafutwa, sio ama ni koti lile linafuliwa, sio kwamba tu linarudi inaweza kuleta maradhi. Kwa hivyo ni mambo mengi ambayo tunahitaji sisi tuyapange taratibu kuhakikisha tunaikuza sekta hii ili kusudi iendeleze kwa watoto wetu, kwa maslaha ya vijana wetu ambao sasa inawasaidia kama ajira. Mheshimiwa Spika, sitaenda zaidi ya hapa na kushukuru kwa kunipa nafasi. Pia imebaki siku moja au mbili kwenda kwa sikukuu yetu, na watakia Waislamu wote sikukuu njema. Mungu awabariki inshallah. Asante.
Asante kila
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to this particular motion. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the boda sector contributes greatly to the development of our nation. We will appreciate and note that, were it not for the boda riders, transport within our rural areas will be greatly hampered. However, we need to look at the issues that the young riders are facing. One key issue is the issue of the licensing and training of the riders. These boda drivers, Mr. Speaker, will note that due to high fees on acquisition of driving licenses, majority of them, they are just trained within the villages, and they drive the motorcycles without the requisite license. So it will be important for the National Transport and Safety Authority to look into the policies and formulate come up with the policies which they can advise the national government on how to regulate the border sector. And one of the reforms that I invite the mover of the motion to look into critically is the issue of the licensing and training of the drivers. Because as we say that it's a form of employment, due to desperate situations some young boys are faced with. They train within a day, the following day he's a driver and a rider, and they carry passengers to various destinations. So when you find them on the road, they even don't know the road signs. They don't know when to make a turn. They don't know when even to, they even don't know how to use the features on the motorbike. And that's why we find that we have quite a high number of road accidents contributed by these motor vehicle, by these border riders. So it will be important looking at the National Transport and Safety Function. One of their key mandates is to license motor vehicles and also advise the government on national policy with regard to the road transport system. But I believe that just living on the issue of regulating on licensing within the county as put by my colleague, the Honorable Makali, that will not solve the problem that we are facing currently in this particular sector. We need to ensure that the borders, because this is a key source of employment for the young boys, we need to ensure that we provide the national transport, the NTSA, provide them the necessary training, advise them on how to use the road signs, understand the road signs, so that we avoid the unnecessary accidents that are being caused daily on our roads. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, we also note and appreciate that we have had various incidents whereby borders are being accused of harboring criminals. But we ask ourselves, has the government taken initiative to sit down with this sector so that they identify their leadership to read out the criminals who are among the border riders? So these are some of the key issues that we need to come up with, so that as we came up with the streamlining on the matatu sector where we have circles, even this border circles sector, we need to understand that this particular rider comes from this particular group of riders, so that those who are taking advantage of the lacuna in our regulations to come and commit crime, and so that the whole nation to condemn borders should not have this particular advantage. So I therefore urge the move of the motion to go beyond the proposed amendment that we have gone through and come up with more policies, especially that will move the National Transport and Safety Authority to broaden the regulation that can assist our young brothers who are in this particular sector. I rise to support the motion.
It is a bill. Member for Kitukuchache North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also put a word on the amendment and of the regulations of the border sector. This sector is one of those sectors that contribute a lot to the economy of this country, and we appreciate the young boys and girls who are in this sector who put a lot of effort to make sure that they contribute a lot to this country. So I also support these amendments because the border sector is very disorganized. It's one of those disorganized sectors that we need to put in place. We need to put measures that will assist the young boys who are in this sector, because the guys who are in this sector have happened to, the people who are in this sector happen to cause a lot of accidents because of lack of training, lack of proper driving skills, and there are other people who have also gotten into this sector who have taken advantage of the people who are in this sector and have become thieves they end up using the border sector to go and steal from people, use guns and steal from other people, and it has also caused human trafficking from other places to our areas. So I also request that, I also support this motion because these young people need to be assisted, and there are people who have gotten into this sector who are very young and need to be assisted because the young boys who are below 18 years have gotten into this sector, whereas they are supposed to be in school. So I want to support Honorable Kingara on these regulations and support the entire regulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Madhya.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. At the onset, I want to support this amendment bill by Honorable Kingara. In fact, or indeed, the border sector is a very important sector in this country. Currently, as per the statistics, we have 1.8 million registered border riders. Their contribution to the economy is 1.5 billion Kenya shillings per day. That translates to 45 billion Kenya shillings per month and a whopping 550 billion Kenya shillings per year. That is the contribution to the GDP. That shows you, or that demonstrates the importance of this sector. Why are we supporting this amendment bill? Definitely there is a problem. And every member in this house knows that there's a problem. There is total madness in the border industry. You know, our young men and women, when they join border, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, is like a death sentence. Either you'll be shot by police. If you are not shot by police, either then you'll be involved in accidents. If you are not involved in accidents, the other one is either your motor vehicle, maybe your motorcycle or your border, maybe you'll be stolen at that time, you find that you lose your life. So we need to regulate this sector. Number one, I looked at the amendment bill by Honorable Kingara. And Honorable Kingara recommends, or in the bill, the registration of the border riders at the county level. We know very well that NTSA is not that efficient, even in managing what they currently have. So if this role is taken to the county to register these border riders, I think it will be more efficient for the registration than being left to the NTSA, National Transport Safety Authority. Mr. Speaker, I ask ourselves, if this House feels that this industry is properly regulated, would you encourage your son or your daughter to join this border industry? And I know the answer to many members here is no, because there is a problem. There is a lacuna somewhere, and this is what this amendment bill is trying to cure. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, according to the amendment bill of the honorable member, it recommends the issuance of badges to the border riders and also to the tuk-tuk drivers. You know, Mr. Speaker, if you go out here and you take an Uber or a boat that maybe that is a vehicle, you are very confident that this vehicle has an insurance and the driver has a license. But when you go and take a border, you are not sure. You don't know whether the young man or woman is licensed or even they have insurance. That means there is a problem. I fully support the amendment bill of the honorable member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kabondo Kasipul. And members, just to remind you, when you log in with your card, always ensure that you press the login button so that you are well logged in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I too, at onset, support the amendment. Mr. Speaker, the border sector plays a critical role in the economy. Mr. Speaker, it is a source of employment for many of our youths across the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say here that for the simple reason that these border people are the ones who know who is new, who has come into the constituency or into the town or into the market. They also carry people to various destinations, and they know exactly where these people have gone to. And so if you want, and we have used them in a lot of times, if you want to track a crime or something, the first people who would probably know are the border people. And therefore, I would not want to castigate them, and I want them to be properly organized so that we can benefit, or they can benefit from training, they can benefit from licensing, which we have.
From Siaya going to Busia, do you need Matungu?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to also contribute to this bill by the Honorable Member Honorable Simon. This bill is talking about the regulation of the the low income involved in it of regulation to exploit these young people. And when they are arrested and their motorbikes are impounded, they have to give out a lot of money before they are released. Or we have the motorcycle culture. It is already deep in us. And therefore, as a house, the most important thing to do to assist these young people is to put regulations into place. It is actually on the roads, and they have employed these young people. In fact, I know of some members of parliament who have invested the fact that...
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for also giving me this opportunity to also say something on this particular amendment bill. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I want to commend and thank the border in this country. Honorable Speaker, border play a critical role in terms of creation of job opportunities and also engaging our youths who are jobless. But Mr. Speaker, of fundamental is the role played by borders in terms of strengthening of our I want to also echo the words of the committee that what we are lacking in this country is not the absence of laws. We have, for me where I sit, enough laws to be able to regulate these borders, and that's why I'm happy that many constituencies are also going out of their way using the CDF fund to be able to not only of the national government, and I support this to harmonize this particular amendment bill. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Kiambu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the Honorable Kingara of Ruiru, and also being my member of parliament and being the member of parliament for one of the constituencies that has very many people who don't even understand what they are supposed to do. You drive on Thika Road and you'll find one of them carrying about 3 young children going to school, and you look at it on Thika Road and you do not understand the lane they're even supposed to use, yet they're driving comfortably and with no problem. So what I would want to support is one of the members have said that we need to be on all those lanes on Thika Road. So possibly maybe what I would want to say is that as these regulations are being looked at, we also look at the issues of these regions, because some regions also, I may not really say that we have laws on regions, but we also need to look at some regions have more chaotic problems than others. Looking at...
Thank you, Honorable Murada. You'll have balance of your time in the next sitting, yes, where this bill will be deliberated upon.
Yeah.
The time is now 1 o'clock, so you'll have your balance of time next time this bill is being discussed. This House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, the 19th of April 2023, at